Hey, how you doing? Time again for another top 10 worst of list. The concept is simple. I'll choose a esoteric subject matter and elucidate 10 items within that subject matter that are the worst things I can come up with within that subset. Who am I to act in such a bold fashion as to presume that I can be the arbiter of the worst things of all time, worst examples of a wide array of subjects? Well, I am Albert Einstein's grandson. Baron von Einstein. I really, I'm excited. Oh, it's such an amazing list that I've got for you. It's just so incredibly glorious, enlightening, profound in ways that you could never possibly anticipate. You could not possibly anticipate. I'm telling you. So I've got, it's really, I don't know if any of you figured it out, but this list is just really a contrivance for me to be able to sock it to you with a wide array of what I like to call reality checks. A lot of intellectually imprisoned malefactors would have you term these as conspiracy theories. But hey, hold your horses, Pilgrim, because I've been at this reality check game for longer than most of you have been alive. And I am Albert Einstein's grandson. So, believe me now and hear me later that if I were to try and get to the bottom of it, of what's really going on in this world, I would say that the likelihood of you being the one that's out of your gourd, as opposed to me, that the people who are professing what has heretofore been known as conspiracy theories in an attempt to take the sort of verifiable nature of it, the veracity of it, the believability of these things out of the mix by condemning the person who's espousing any of these. And once you condemn the person, you condemn the message. I remember, probably the only one who does, during the 2000 presidential election brouhaha, amongst the many very, very Nazi-esque flourishes that were unleashed by Bush Sr. at the time, one of which was disenfranchising a lot of the black voters in Dade County, which is an area of Florida that leans very heavily Democratic. There were reports, widespread reports at the time, that many people were stuck in line waiting prior to the closing time of the polling stations. And that, per state law, makes them eligible to vote. The polling station has to accommodate everyone who is in line prior to closing time of the polls. And there were widespread reports of that didn't happen. And of course, it was a very heavily Democratic-leaning area, as I mentioned, and therefore, I mean, the election was so close it could have been enough to swing the election right there. Most of the people who had complained about this, and to my recollection, all of the people who complained about this were blacks in the state. And as such, and it could have been just a majority, but the person who responded to this was Jesse Jackson, who just died the other day. Now, Jesse Jackson, back in this time, was not some obscure name from the past. He had ran for president twice. He had acted in a extremely heroic way on at least two occasions when Americans were held hostage in the Middle East, and he went ahead and negotiated releases. He was at the Lorraine Motel when Martin Luther King got shot. Not a big, to be honest with you, fan of Jesse Jackson. It just, for whatever reason, I never really connected with, I don't know, it just didn't seem on the money to me. Something seemed missing. And it's just an instinct sometimes you get from people. It just seemed like he was a kind of like a glory hound and a front runner in some ways. I don't know. But anyway, I digress. I met him one day, by the way, at a local cable television station where I was doing some work, and he walked in briefly to, I think, probably guest on a show. And he was wearing a full suit with flip-flops with no socks on. So, I mean, I thought that was kind of fun. Seemed like a nice guy. Didn't say anything more than hi. It wasn't required. He was breezing through. So was I. But he seemed like an okay guy, certainly. But the thing is, there were some digressions, weren't there? Now, here's where it all comes together. While Jesse Jackson was flying down to Florida to protest the disenfranchisement of black voters, and by the way, I want to really make sure that I add the courage of this guy, because he was the only nationally recognized personality anywhere outside of people who were being, specifically paid to do like news reports and stuff. They gave a rat's ass about the entire election being stolen in 2000. There wasn't a single person. And you talk about people, like going to college campuses for Gaza and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know, whatever other protests there have been, Occupy Wall Street and stuff. But in 2000, Jesse Jackson was the only guy who had the guts to show up and be counted and try to protect the rights of people who were clearly having their rights extremely violated. And at least that's based on reports that I heard. And while he is in the plane, and I'm not exaggerating, literally, while he was in the plane flying down to Florida, a big national news story comes out all over the freaking place, every outlet and everything. Jesse Jackson fathers child out of wedlock. Now, I want to emphasize why this is so crucially important to getting a full comprehension of our world around us, and why, part of why I have personally, our media controls our language. They influence us all the time. They insert phrases and comprehensive, like when they a week before the invasion of Ukraine, they changed the name of the capital from pronunciation of the name from Kiev to Kyiv, all at once. Everybody, all the news outlets, all at the same time. They're on, like a mailing list from Mind Control Central, where they get all these things. They did the same thing with calling the Las Vegas shooting, the big Las Vegas shooting at the country music show, the worst mass shooting in modern American history. Modern. They all called it modern American history. All of them. All the outlets. Always phrased it like that. All at the same time. Now, it happened, I believe, on a Sunday. And by Monday morning, every news outlet is calling it modern American history. Did I miss something? Was there another mass shooting that was bigger than the Las Vegas shooting in pre-modern American history? Did I miss it? Was there like a guy with a musket sitting on top of Faneuil Hall or something like that, picking off people? And because with a musket, a mass shooting of that scale would have taken probably a couple of months. I mean, you're sitting there loading it up and everything like that manually and waiting for somebody to come by and you're shooting and stuff. But yes, I mean, I heard it. And you don't have to believe me. I don't care if you believe me anymore. At this point, it's just so far beyond salvation that would take a frickin' miracle for this world to pull itself out of the extermination of the human race. And I say that, meaning that the AI robots are coming and it's it for us. There's no AI, there's no life after the AI robot distribution. I don't know what you call it. After they turn the AI robots loose on us, forget about it. But anyway, so they do all these things in consort with each other. All of the news outlets are all on the same page, and a lot of it's probably tied in with the fact that back in the 80s, Ronald Reagan, when he became president, embedded the news media in with the military. And we never really got a full explanation or proof as to what the mission was for that and how expansive it was. Was all media now being censored from the military, everything that goes on the airwaves, or was it just people who are in combat zones? So, I mean, it would explain a lot, because if there is one centralized authority that everything has to go through, then, of course they're manipulating and controlling everything to be on the same page and everybody to get the same information all at once. But anyway, so Jesse Jackson's in the plane. The whole country, all at the same time, gets this giant news story. Jesse Jackson, father's child out of wedlock. He turns around and goes back to Chicago. Doesn't even protest, ruins his protest, destroys his career, really. And that's why, for the most part, why we didn't hear from him for a lot. And his kids got busted too. At least Jesse Jackson Jr. did. I think there was one other one that some sketchy stuff went on. So, and, all these politicians are doing sketchy stuff all the time. Stuff that they can hang them out to dry when their ticket gets pulled. And if you don't believe me, take a look at all of the chairmen of the Ways and Means Committees in the House of Representatives in the near term after a Democratic president was elected. That started with Carter. I'm sorry, I can't remember this guy's freaking name. But he'd been a long established, the Ways and Means Committee is where they get all of the bills passed and everything like that. You notice how when the Republicans get into office, the first thing that they do is they pass gigantic upper class tax cuts, going back to Reagan, and bury the country in debt that is owned, the paper of which is owned by billionaires, and we give tons of tax cuts to billionaires, so it's like they're double dipping. on the same chip. And I don't remember the chairman of the House and Ways and Means Committee when Carter first took office, but this guy was like super like established. And he was driving in a limo, and there was some kind of wreck or something like that. And the lady that he was with jumps out of the car and starts trying to get away from like the scene by swimming through the reflective pool at the National Mall. And she's got a really funky name and stuff. I'm sorry, it escapes me. But they got rid of the chairman of the House and Ways and Means Committee right as Carter was taking office. Critically destabilizing his ability to be able to pass legislation in that early window when the presidents have, usually they're riding in on a wave of party success, and will wind up with a nice little, majority or boost in the amount of party affiliated members of Congress. So to lose the House Ways and Means chairman at the outset of their presidency was a big, huge blow. And then the same exact thing happened when Clinton got into office. Now I remember Dan Rostenkowski was the head of the Ways and Means Committee, and he gets busted right away for mail fraud, using too many stamps out of his office or something. It was so convoluted what they got him for. It was seemed like the most innocuous thing, but he was done. And that was, again, the head of the House Ways and Means Committee. And you'd think that perhaps if I'm just some guy doing what they're calling conspiracy theories to throw you off the scent of the reality of what's going on underneath the surface in our society, then why did it happen a third time when Barack Obama took office? Third Democratic president in a row, third head of the House Ways and Means Committee kicked to the curb. And this time it was Charles Rangel. And Charles Rangel got kind of semi-busted for some kind of weird timeshare thing. I'm not even really sure what the hell it was. It was so obscure. It wasn't like, it was anything. It was so innocuous that he was allowed to keep his seat in the House of Representatives. He just had to give up his chair of the Ways and Means Committee. Now, for that to happen 3 times in a row, for it to happen twice in a row is a statistical impossibility. For it to happen 3 times in a row, the fix is in. I'm calling them reality checks from now on. And that's what it is. I'm going to impose that upon the rest of the world. And why should the media be able to impose a bunch of terminology and contextualize our ability to be able to communicate with each other by not allowing us access to enough terms that accurately describe what we're living through, right? I mean, we've got, plenty of, phrases and stuff like that, like curiosity killed the cat and ignorance is bliss, and all kinds of different things that teach us to underachieve in a underhanded way. So for now on, it's over. Conspiracy theory is no longer an extant term in the English language to apply towards unveiling the truisms that have been tied up with not only cover-ups by crimes committed against us by our government, but also, the efforts to conceal those things and make it a part of a grand scale level of social engineering. They shall now be called reality checks, because the people who are believing, even if you did believe stuff from mainstream media before, now you've got, 40% of media owned by Larry Ellison, who's one of the world's richest billionaires, top 2 maybe. And He's best friends with Trump. Best friends with Trump, and now he's going to own CNN. He's going to own Warner Brothers and Paramount and Comedy Central, which is where your precious Daily Show is, right? And I mean, it's a litany of things. Random House Publishing. And obviously the two main movie studios and probably, one out of the three biggest streaming sites there is, and creating all these movies and stuff, which are already so sort of thinly disguised propaganda pieces and marketing infomercials disguised as movies to begin with, and now they're getting rid of all the actors and stuff like that, so you won't have and directors, so that you just the AI will create all the things that we see, on top of the fact that they're all owned by these misanthropists. And not that, Larry Ellison is all that much worse than a guy named Sumner Redstone who used to own Paramount and all that stuff. Sumner Redstone, hi. Hi, I'm Sumner Redstone. Let's go to my whites only country club and hang out and have a Mai Tai and, discuss the hoi polloi. And, I just don't, Warner Brothers, that's a big blue chip part of the big picture, because now it's CNN, and I don't know if Headline News still exists, but if it does, it is, and TBS, and on and on and on. And it's just going to be, endless whitewashing and marginalizing of any ideas or people who express them. It's going to be it's going to be like everything's going to be Fox News. Everything's going to be Fox News. God damn it. All right. So anyway, that's enough of an intro. I've got to get through some obligations here. Number one, as you might have already figured out, I am off my rocker. I cannot be trusted or relied upon. Wink, wink. To have any of the things I say has any veracity. It's on you. Whether or not you want to believe me, I don't have any skin in the game. I don't even care. Nobody's paying me for any of this stuff. I'm just out here trying to, take my last swings at. I've been working at trying to find ways to wake people up out of their slumber for 30 freaking years. I've done every possible, imaginable contrivance that I could get and worked my ass off until I became like a big fat pile of goo. And I failed. I failed you. And I'm here just to try to pay those dues and try, one last time to, I don't know, I guess it's pipe dreaming. But the fact is that, I don't want you to believe me. I want you to go out and figure this stuff out for yourself. Go ahead and look up the Jesse Jackson and the airplane thing, and when they found out that he had fathered a kid out of wedlock, it was an absolute attack, and nobody really said much about it on a national level before he went to protest, but absolutely nobody did after they saw what happened to him on his way down to Florida to protest the 2000 election. Clearly that they had, a file on him, and he was going down, and they got a little jittery, and they were like, well, let's, take this person out. And once they ruin you, your personality and everything like that, then your message is ruined too. Number two, I'm not partisan. I'm done. I'm done with that game. I've been done with it for a long time, to be honest with you. I started to see, obviously, I think you can probably tell by looking at me, you're going to want to project onto me sort of a guy, here's a hairy weirdo dude who's like screaming that the world has been compromised by racist, belligerent, authoritarian, narcissist, fascist, closeted, elitist jerk-offs. And you're going to be like, well, that guy's going to be a lefty. Well, I'm not. Okay. The fact is that, yeah, maybe in terms of my political ideologies and certainly my social ideologies, I feel like I'm more aligned with progressive thought. I mean, I just, I believe in live and let live. I believe in, the golden rule, do unto others as you have done to you. But I'm not going to, sort of, a lot of what was so great about progressivism when I first, kind of got into the bag was that a lot of it is maybe idealized, but certainly aspired to being tolerant, to being, to embracing others, and not to be judgmental about, what they were, but to find out who they were and to try to make sure that there were opportunities for people from all walks of life to have an equitable, world to live in. And so, I mean, that's where I'm coming from in terms of, like, if you want to base that. But, I mean, that has nothing to do with today's Democratic Party. I mean, today's Democratic Party, the leaders of it are, sellout, blue dog Democrat, ultra conservative. Everything that they actually wind up doing benefits the rich. End of story. Okay? And, the Republicans will do the same thing. They're all on the same page together. It's a one-party system. It's a one-party. There is no anything that represents the working class or the blue-collar types or the independent business owners. And in the absence of that is how everybody's getting all nuts and how people are becoming, their lives are being annihilated by these, a stratospheric rise in the balance sheets of these billionaire jerk-offs. I just don't get it. I don't see why people don't see it, but I'm not playing it anymore. That dividing line between right and left is fake. It doesn't exist. The only dividing line between types of humanoids is between the haves and the have-nots, period. And that's, I'm done with it. It's a 100% golden rule from here on in. Do unto others as you have them do unto you in terms of my interpersonal relationships. Everything else is take my swings at our overlords and try my very best to find a crack in the armor somehow. And so this top 10 list is put together by a team of clog dancing somnambulists who gathered together outside of Six Flags Atlanta, something, and take copious amounts of sodium pentothal mixed with baby aspirin to come up with these lists. I'm just trying to create a movement where, we all love each other and we can sing Kumbaya together. Really, like we mean it. Kumbaya from the heart. Okay. And then so, you've got a commercial sponsor before I get to it. Now we're talking about, part sponsored by Close Encounters of the Third Input, a new movie from, what's that guy? Peter Jackson? Did that one? Peter Jackson, where he almost employs a person of color in a major movie role. Not quite, but almost. Peter Jackson, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so where are we now? Oh, yeah. Also, part sponsor of The Wrath of Shaka Khan, the new Star Trek trilogy. All right, so that's it. So let's go on. Finally, I know that you're all waiting with bated breath or something else, bated, blah, blah, blah. Today's top 10 worst list is top 10 worst all-time examples of BS. And no, I have not landed on the list myself. Although, you'd think I'd be a prime candidate? Who wants to see my Mr. Roper from Three's Company imitation? Are you ready? There we go. The only imitation I got in my toolkit. All right, so number 10 of the top 10 worst all-time examples of BS. The lone gunman theory for the RFK assassination. Ooh, see what I did there? Woo, woo, woo. RFK. I don't know, just throw a few things out there. I mean, it's just a litany of stuff that doesn't make any sense. They go through the kitchen, even though it wasn't a pre-planned route for RFK's exit from the Ambassador Hotel, and his security people begged him not to do it, and he did it, and then bingo. Sirhan's gun, I think, had 9 bullets, and they recovered a lot more shell casings than that. There's, supposedly who was the lady in the polka dot dress who shows up and clipped him behind the ear and made her way. One of the key, I think, elements is that the Ambassador Hotel was owned by Junius Shine, who was best friends with Richard Nixon. And what's his name? Roy Cohn had represented his son, Junius Shine's son, in the Army versus Shine, I think it was, case where it wound up destroying McCarthyism in large part because the Army, Roy Cohn had been working with the virulently anti-communist son of Junius Shine, and he got drafted, and Cohn tried to keep him from the Army from getting him, and all kinds of nastiness transpired, and it wound up having a big impact on McCarthyism. And so Junius Shine, who's the owner of the Ambassador Hotel at the time of the RFK killing and before, was intimately associated with Richard Nixon. And in fact, Richard Nixon, when he was busted for having a slush fund in the 1952 presidential race and was almost kicked off the ticket, and would have been had it been anybody else, but as a means of trying to get himself out of losing his political career, he gave what's called the Checker speech, which is a very famous, perhaps even the most famous televised speech of all time, where an unelected vice president who was just simply on the campaign trail during the 1952 presidential election was allowed a 30-minute uninterrupted slot of primetime television on the tail end of the most popular ratings show on the air at the time, which is already getting into some weird reality check territory. And in addition to that, he holed up in the Ambassador Hotel to write the speech and get himself all prepped and everything like that. So this is how tight he was with Junius Shine of the Ambassador Hotel, which is where RFK got shot. Now, again, all of a sudden, employees, quote unquote, are showing RFK to go through the kitchen and all that. There's a lot of, and the lady in the polka dot dress was rumored to be seen by many, and there's so many shell casings they can barely even count them in the floor of the kitchen, even though Sirhan's gun had only held 9 bullets, and he didn't have time to reload. You kind of thinking like, well, I mean, this is almost like home turf, and Richard Nixon was the primary beneficiary, obviously, at this point. Maybe not so much during the JFK assassination, but certainly during the RFK assassination. There was a lot of, the person who was benefited the most from the RFK assassination was clearly Richard Nixon. RFK would have beat his ass. Hubert Humphrey almost beat his ass, and would have beat his ass if it weren't for the riots of the 1968 Democratic Convention. And then there was the fact that who's Mary Jo Kopechne? Mary Jo Kopechne became a centralized figure in the campaign office, centralized main campaign office of RFK. And Mary Jo Kopechne was deeply associated with Richard Nixon and other shady right-wing politicos of the time. And that was like her first job was one of Richard Nixon's most scurrilous sort of dark arts type of politician. Off the top of my head, I can't remember his name. I'll try to dig it out. But that's where she first became associated with politics out of some place, Ohio or something like that. All of a sudden, she had to go all the way down south to work for this southern guy who truly evil and a really Manchurian candidate vibe type of a politician, and she met with all those guys, Nixon and this politician and all that kind of stuff. And yet she finds herself as a centralized figure, and she worked her way into being a centralized figure in the RFK campaign office by getting a bunch of dirt on opposing politicians. So where was she, Mary Jo Kopechne, coming up with this stuff? And then she turns out to be the central figure in the destruction of Ted Kennedy during the Chappaquiddick crisis. There's a lot of stuff that's going on that all you really got to do is read. It's still out there, and just connect the dots for yourself. Why people become more interested in following along with a show like Who's Smarter Than a fifth grader, and couldn't give a rat's ass about what the world around them and their lives, their livelihood. This is, and what we're seeing now with the, today I woke up and it's the war in Iran, which could, turn into the end times. And they've got, because if they happen to have a sneaky little bomb or two, the real reason behind Israel, right? The real reason why they created Israel wasn't as a, sort of payback for all that they had to go through in the Holocaust. Israel is the new concentration camp. They put as many, Jewish people in the same area because now, like with, just like a short little burst of 2-3 nuclear weapons, you could probably wipe out as many people as Hitler did in all of World War II. Israel, I'm sure a lot of people will be happy to know that. I can't believe how much anti-Semitism there is in the world today. And I'm sure a lot of people will be, wow, that's kind of cool. Because you're all a bunch of sadistic, brainwashed nobodies whose opinions are as worthless as the plastic your souls are printed on. And if you can, I know you're probably sitting there going, who's this fat idiot who's telling me all this stuff? I'm the one who's telling you, and I've been there, and I've researched the hell out of it, and I'll go up against anybody who says, that they can't take the heat. Get out of the freaking kitchen, you freaking moron. You took an 80-year-long nap after World War II hostilities ended, and you let the goddamn Nazis who paid for Nazi Germany to just go free. What did you think they were going to do? Just give up? 1952, you elected the head of the military to be the head of the civilian government. Never do that kind of stuff, man. If you do that kind of stuff, you're just begging for a military, a police state. And that's what you got. And you've had it ever since. And you're too dumb to even know. And time after time, this stuff spills over into the public. And Iran-Contra, 9/11 was a freaking joke, man. And the JFK assassination. His head goes back like that. What more do you need? You don't need any of the reality checks that people have been giving you that are so obvious. And you're so dumb. You just want to believe the fairy tale so bad so you can get back and watch a goddamn, Alabama Crimson Tide football game. What a stooge. Don't expect any sympathy from me when you go down to when the AI robots start coming out and start chasing you all over the goddamn place. And boning your ass and then throwing you is a nice morning after little repartee into a boxcar to ship you down to a concentration camp where they'll gas you. And nobody is going to give a rat's ass that you're gone. Because none of you make a freaking difference. You're all so brainwashed and caught up in your own self and your lies and blaming all these different things that have nothing to do with the real priorities you should be focused with, which is creating a means to be able to connect with each other without having the corporations and third-party outsourced propaganda mystery get in the way, so that you can communicate and have some sort of institution, and then you take over the media, and then you go after the robber barons and their proxies and try to replace them with, by using an economic motivation tool. It's not even the political votes are meaningless. They have been forever. The only thing that matters is your dollar vote. And maybe you can swing them a little bit with that, but I probably doubt it, because 80 years is a long time to take a freaking nap after you didn't even really destroy the Nazis back in World War II. You just destroyed, the proxies of the people who put up the money to build the Nazi empire. Who do you think bought the freaking Wehrmacht in 1933 when Hitler took power? You think, it was the height of the Depression. Nobody had any money. Germany was just devastated by both the global depression, gigantic, unbearable, like 1,000% inflation and stuff like that, and the reparations that they had made at the end of World War II. It was almost a third world nation. And all of a sudden, 2 years later, they're fighting wars and they've got 0% unemployment and all kinds of stuff. Idiot! You think they just manufacture the money out of nowhere? They had to borrow it from somebody. Who the hell's got the money to borrow it? The Krups family, the Windsor family, the Harriman family, Henry Ford, Alfred P. Sloan, all these people, GM, Ford Motor Company, Coca-Cola, Associated Press. All these people are in. For the entire time, they're running the same management teams. Are running the factories that are building the Wehrmacht machines. At the same time, they're building the Allies tanks and stuff like that here in the United States. Why did they send when they were building the factories to build automobiles in Nazi Germany after Hitler took power? Why did they send the factories and money to build factories over to Germany in the first place? It was the height of the Depression. America desperately needed factory jobs. Why weren't they building American cars to export into Germany instead of going and building the factories over there? These are all things that you're just totally oblivious of. And that's why you failed. That's why we're where we are at. And every single one of the people you're responsible for victimizing. It's not just you, and it's not just the fact that the place is falling apart and going to hell. But it's everybody else in the world who became victimized by your indifference, by your ignorance. The people in the sweatshops all around the world. The people have been victimized by our armies, been victimized by our support of nasty jerk-offs that we've supported in the overthrows and otherwise with coup d'etats in various different places to install puppet fascists. And enough's enough. Just quit pointing fingers at everybody. You were right here. You did have a voice. You did have the freedom to be able to put groups together and fight against it. But you were too busy. I'm too busy watching Leave It to Frickin' Beaver, goddammit. Don't bother me. And just that doesn't even talk about the 2.5 million people that are always in prisons, or the redlining and racist segregation and stealing the Negro Leagues out from the black owners of those teams to collapse them by cherry picking all the talent and putting it in a Major League Baseball. It wasn't segregation. That was annihilation, is what that was. It was annihilation of black ownership in sports, and it never recovered. I think there's been one, maybe two black owners in sports ever since, in all sports. Like, Jordan's got a piece of something. That guy's always got a piece of something. That guy. And then, I think the guy who owns, was it the Carolina Panthers? Man, I just, so, rotten pig dogs. I just don't get it. I don't get it how you can live with yourselves. And you're so full of yourself, like you know everything. Oh, I'm going to destroy the regime by marching with a cute sign. I'm going to destroy it all. Look at me go. Look at me destroying me. I'm destroying regimes. I'm helping. Damn it. Who the hell am I even? What was I looking for? That guy from somewheres. Oh yeah, Mary Jo Kopechne's. Kopechne. All right, so here we go. Here's my notes here. Kopechne. Uh-oh. Oh, here we go. Kopechne didn't die. Oh, wait, no. Maybe Kopechne didn't drown. She was poisoned, and the diver that recovered her said she looked like she could have survived an air pocket for hours. Was Kopechne in on it? This is not a casual temp employee that filed around the office or anything like that. She ties with the RFK campaign. That's why she was there in Chappaquiddick that night. They would get together, the staff from the RFK office, election office, would get together every once in a while and sort of commiserate and have a little, party and get together and stuff. And Kopechne usually didn't go to these things, but apparently she had heard that Ted Kennedy was going to be included in this particular one at Chappaquiddick, and then they moved on it. Oh, wait, I saw the guy's name. Hang on, this is important. Claude Pepper? Smathers? Oh, yeah, sorry about it. She went to work for Florida Senator George Smathers. This man, at best, I'm reading my notes, I apologize, but this is, this man at best was an enigma. At worst, he could be one of the most horrible traitors of our country's history. Smathers would become very close with both LBJ and Richard Nixon, the two main point people that were necessary to be in on it if there was, they were in on it. Okay, I'm tired of playing the game. Smathers was like liberal on the outside, but took numerous conflicting actions and suggested he was a hardcore racist at heart and one of these McCarthyism types, rabid anti-communist types. For example, he advocated the Civil Rights Bill publicly, but voted against it. This is Smathers again. He was known as a Southern liberal for somewhat baffling reasons, as he was sort of like a template for Trump in many ways. Back in those days, there were many toxic Democrats who went by the term Dixiecrats. These were the precursors of the religious right, the moral majority that wound up converting to the Republican Party, who refused to vote for the Republican Party for ages, for over 100 years, because it was the party of Lincoln. They couldn't care less about who the people were that were running. If they were on the Republican ticket, they wouldn't vote because they wouldn't vote for Republican because it was the party of Lincoln. And I'm not even exaggerating. For like over 100 years. Until they finally, Nixon reached out with the olive branch by having the first Republican convention in the South at Miami Beach in 1968. And then Barry Goldwater, actually before that in 1964, was such an ultra-conservative that people were going, see the brand new Republican Party, crypto-fascist to the max. And people were like, ooh, it's a brand new Republican Party. And then eventually Bush Sr. Funneled them all in on for the Reagan Revolution. So Smathers, I'm not going to get into it. I just don't have the time. But Smathers is the guy, George Smathers, and he was tied in very heavily with Nixon and LBJ. And that's who Mary Jo Kopechne went to work for. So there are connections between Mary Jo Kopechne, who was like the pivotal central figure of the whole Chappaquiddick incident that ruined Ted Kennedy, and the RFK assassination, as she was like the centralized person the main go-to person in the RFK. I mean, she could have told, all of his travel plans and everything on an ongoing basis, been feeding that information to Smathers and LBJ and Nixon and all the people that were in on it. So anyway, that's number 10. Number 9, top worst all-time examples of BS. Parties that turn into sausage fests. It's a bummer. It's a bummer for everybody, not just for the guys, but for, because for every sausage that's in a sausage fest, there's, a girl somewhere in with a decided dearth of sausages available. Number 8, the top 10 worst examples of BS. That line in the Declaration of Independence where they said that, they believe all men are created equal, even though they wouldn't give blacks the right to vote for 90 years and women the right to vote for 130 years. So, I guess all men are created equal is just sort of like, I don't know. I think it was a campaign slogan to get people to fight for the war. I think the Declaration of Independence was nothing more than like a army recruitment flyer. Really. I mean, just absolutely 10 years later, and this is only 10 years later when they wrote the Constitution, they clearly, these are the same guys, that signed the Declaration of Independence pretty much, that, were Constitutional Convention. And they said, look, by all men, we kind of meant no men are created equal to white wealthy landowners. And that's what these Supreme Court judges, when they say that they're constitutional originalists, when they're testifying, they're admitting to you. They want the Constitution to go back the way it was when it was written, when it was first ratified, which meant, blacks were 3/5 a human being and women were 0% human being. And don't let them fool you. They're telling you right up front who they are. Harlan Crow, the world's largest private collection of Nazi memorabilia, is best friends with Clarence Thomas. Number 7, foods that are advertised as being flavored chocolatey. What the hell is that? Chocolatey. What is chocolatey made out of? Nobody tell. I don't want to know. Number 6 of the top 10 worst all-time examples of BS. People using code words because what they're thinking about is monstrous and despicable, such as the phrase family values, which really means the phrase white power. And there's a bunch of them. They call them code words now. I suppose that's, if you can't say anything out in public, man, that something's wrong with it. If you got to use these code words and stuff like that, what was another one? Liberal media is a code word for Jewish-owned media. Yeah. Well, anyway. Number 5 of the top 10 worst examples of BS. People who today try to claim that people who hated disco music back in the day were somehow actually hateful of gay people, when what they really hated was the people who were into disco at the time did so like to get laid and, post-Woodstock generation, and, bird dogging chicks and banging beaver and doing tons of coke and shirts on by polyester suits and shirts unbuttoned to their navel with the gold chains and everything like that. Obvious freaking phonies. And that's the bulk of the people who were into disco in terms of the numbers. And that's what everybody hated. And they hated the repetitive boom, boom, boom. After, it's coming right out of the, late 60s and early 70s when there's a lot of prog rock and stuff and, Sly and the Family Stone and, all kinds of bands that were, doing some, really great, fun, electrifying stuff and intellectually charged and stuff. And all of a sudden is boom, boom, the same. And plus the beats per minute was also pretty homogenous. So it's the big giant bass drum booming on every single freaking song and movie soundtrack and everything. And the subject matter of the lyrics was all very surface-minded because it's just a bunch of white people trying to get laid and acting like complete freaking morons in the process. That's what people hated. I was there at the tail end. I was young. I didn't really know much about it, but I had, a lot of really close friends who happened to be gay, and we got attacked and stuff like that. And it wasn't over disco music, I'll tell you that much. Bricks thrown at our heads, attack dogs unleashed on us and stuff, and was nasty stuff. But it wasn't because people, were, at discos and stuff. Crazy. What do you believe that stupid ass dumb stuff? Number 4, everything you read or see in mainstream media, of course, that's top 10 examples of BS, including me. Yeah, well, I actually did make the list. How do you like that? Number 3, everything ever taught in public schools. I mean, that should be pretty obvious to you. Number 2, everything. Okay, of the top 10 worst examples of BS. And number 1 of the top 10 worst all-time examples of BS, trickle-down economic theory. Yeah. Wow, what an incredible time it's been. I can hardly believe it's over. And I kept it under an hour. Woo, what do you think of that? All right, some outro, little disclaimer types of things. Everything I said here is opinions. Not of my own, but, this sort of the voice is somewhere in the universe is communicating to me. I'm telling you. If you focus, you give yourself some time reflection, you read, and you try your best to refine all those ideas and work through them, blog them, do a podcast, go over and over and over again so that you become facile with it and get used to dealing with complex issues. And they put puppets out there in the front lines to make you think that these guys are simpletons. The overlords are, like Dick Cheney himself, spoke like 7 different languages. That's the type of intellects that you're going up against. And the people that they put out there, the total idiots, are flying about and acting like, snobs and all the kind of horrible stuff. That's all an intentional act. It's designed to distract you, make you think, put your mind at ease. There's no possible way that these idiots could get one over on me. Well, the people who are really charged got one over on you in a big way. In a big way. And, those of you people pissed off at me for, speaking my mind or being honest about it and trying my very best to just communicate ideas and not worry about, all the different ins and outs of lingo that I'm supposed to be observing, or if I stepped on any toes emotionally, psychologically, or anything like that. I think you can perhaps I can put your mind at ease by letting you know that my life is completely horrible. I mean, it's like living through a horror movie on a daily basis. I cry at the drop of a hat. I'm like, so somebody dropped a hat? No, but seriously, I'm in pain all the time. I'm having a lot of trouble enduring. I lost everything fighting for a better world for herself. Lost absolutely everything and was attacked. The worst attacks were by people who I was trying my hardest to help. And so, I've betrayal, regrets, depression, isolation, and stuff. But I wouldn't have it any other way. I absolutely love the fight. I love writing about stuff like this. And I don't necessarily like pontificating so much, but I do enjoy telling people what to think. And I also love playing music and stuff like that. So I enjoy expressing myself. I enjoy life, even with all the damage that I've incurred in this path. Maybe cut me a little slack and stuff, and just try to do your own thing. That's all I'm trying to do, is to get you to wise up and get engaged, because it's the end times are upon us. And these AR robots aren't messing around, man. These billionaires aren't going to start paying out 8 billion universal basic income checks to keep us, afloat when there's nothing for us to do but sit around and complain and make trouble for them. And then they got to pay all this money for healthcare and housing and all this stuff. What are they going to bother? They just have the Roman army create all the luxury items that they need. And so anyway, that's why don't you? Oh, I got one last thing I'm going to ask you. Smash the like button. Smash it. Smash the freaking like button. Anyway, that's all the time I got. So hit the button, subscribe. Thanks for tuning in, you filthy animal. And Let's try to get this through this thing together. Oh, wait.